We're back out here at the Big Lake, and today we're talking about soft plastics that are impregnated with salt. Are they better? Does it even make a difference? Well, we're going to do a deep dive into that very subject. Trust me, you don't want to miss this one. Stick around. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have your chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and today we're talking about salted soft plastics. You're shopping online or at your favorite tackle shop, you're looking for your favorite soft plastic baits, whether it's a stick bait, whether it's a creature bait, or whatever, and you see it right there on the package, impregnated with salt. More salt than the competition, loaded with salt. What is that? What does that even mean? Well, it means that the manufacturer of that particular soft plastic has put salt into their plastisol whenever they're molding that bait. And what type of salt is it? Well, it's regular old table salt usually that's just ground down to a much finer powder, so it suspends in the plastisol as it cools rather than just sinking to the bottom. And does it make a difference? Well, the reason for adding salt to the soft plastics is generally twofold. First of all, that salt will make the plastic more dense, give it a little bit more weight. It improves casting ability and it increases the sink rate of that bait. And there's also a secondary purpose to the salt in that plastic bait. And that is, some manufacturers claim it increases the flavor of that bait, which makes the fish want to bite harder and hold on longer. Of course, it's not a scent and it's not any sort of oil or liquid or whatever that's added to the bait to make it smell or taste better, like you'll see with max scent baits or bait fuel or anything like that. It's just salt. But some manufacturers and some anglers will even claim that the salt improves the flavor of the bait. I guess bass are like people, and the fact that they want a little salt with their food, so I guess that's understandable. But what we want to know is, does it really do anything? Does it affect how the bait behaves underwater? And does it increase the attractiveness of those bass? Well, I did several experiments underwater to show just exactly the difference between a salted bait and an unsalted bait. Now, if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, you've heard me say over and over again that I make a lot of my own soft plastic stick baits, just like this guy here. This is one that I've made for myself. Now, when I make these, I don't add salt to the plastisol, and I do that for a very specific reason, because a lot of times I don't want that extra sink, especially if I'm fishing it on a NACO rig or a small amount of weight, say a 1/16 ounce bullet weight on a Texas rig. And the reason why I do that is, well, this water is heavily vegetated. There is not really much exposed hard bottom for the bait to fall to. So it's constantly falling into vegetation. So I need that bait to stand up. I need the tail of that bait to stick up above the vegetation and wiggle just a little bit. I feel like it entices the bass a little bit more because bass really don't care for salad and they don't want to get a mouthful of gunk whenever they're going after a bait. So if your bait falls into that slop, a lot of times the bass, well, they'll just give up on it. So I use unsalted baits 80%, 90% of the time. That's what works for me. But again, I did experiments with it today. I tried 3 different types of rigging. I did a weightless wacky rig, I did a NACO rig with a 1/16 ounce nail weight, and then I did a Texas rig with a 1/16 ounce bullet weight, worm weight, whatever you want to call it. And I worked these baits underwater and I recorded them on my camera as I did so, and there was actually quite a bit of difference between the 2 types of baits. Now, the other bait that I was using is this guy right here, and this is a Strike King shimmy stick. These have got quite a bit of salt to them. You have some manufacturers such as Yum, which have just a little bit of salt. And then Gary Yamamoto, or I guess they're just Yamamoto now, they have a good bit of salt, but these have a really high salt content to them. And I thought that they would be perfect for contrast for what we're trying to do here today. So as we look at the first experiment that I did, This is the weightless wacky rig, and it is with this worm here, this exact worm here, and you can see it is achingly slow in how long it takes to get down. It's almost neutrally buoyant. If it wasn't for that wacky hook, that worm may as well float. So it takes a long time for it to get down. And if you're fishing shallow water up under flooded brush, like I do a lot of times, then for me, that's perfect. It's no more than a foot or even less of water, so I don't have to wait very long for that worm to go down to the bottom. If you're fishing deeper water, well, this may not be what you're looking for because it's going to take forever for it to get to the bottom. So I contrasted that with this exact worm here. Again, this is the Strike King shimmy stick. And as you can see, while it does have a very slow fall rate, and it's a pretty enticing fall rate, it has a really good flap as it goes down, where my unsalted one didn't really have as much of a shimmy. It was more of a flat glide. But again, it doesn't seem to matter because I still catch a lot of fish with it. And whether that's important or not to the fish, I can't say. It's just something that I noticed. Now, if you see here, we're moving on to the NACO rig. And again, these are the same two worms. I used a 1/16 ounce nail weight. That is the only change. There's nothing different about them. And we're casting into the same water. But as you can see on the NACO rig, this is where that saltless worm really starts to shine to me. You see, as it comes down, it's not laying flat on the ground. That tail, it wants to stick up. It wants to wiggle in the current. That gives it a more lifelike appearance. That is the shimmy. That's what I'm looking for. The salted one, well, it tends to do like it did whenever it was weightless. It wants to lay flat on the bottom as soon as it gets there. As soon as it comes to rest on the bottom, it's laying flat. Whereas the saltless one might actually rest flat on the bottom eventually, but it takes an achingly long time for it to get there. And the only reason why I know it's on the bottom is because I can see it. Normally, if I'm casting farther out, well, I don't know if I'm going to wait that long before I give those baits a twitch again. So most of the time, I'm twitching it with that tail still up in the air. And I feel that actually gives me better action. Now, the third way we're going to look at this is on a Texas rig. I've got a 1/16 ounce bullet weight tied to these with an offset 3/0 worm hook. Again, they are identical other than the same two worms. Now, as you can see, the weightless one, when it hits the bottom, that tail again wants to stick up and it wiggles in the current. That's not me imparting action to it. That is the current that is giving it that subtle action. And I feel that that is really attractive to the fish. That weighted worm, well, when it hits the bottom, it wants to lay flat. Now let me clear this up with me saying I don't think one is particularly or inherently better than the other. Now the tail up is the one that I prefer, but for your lake, you may just want to drag that worm along the bottom and keep it as close to the bottom as you possibly can. That may be what works on your lake. So this is not a better or worse. This is merely showing this is different from that one. I prefer the one that is unsalted. You may prefer the salted one. But as you can plainly see, there are some really stark differences between the two types of worms. And I think on different fisheries, that can really change the amount of bites that you get and the types of bites that you get. So you need to play around and find out which one works best for you. So there you have it. Salted baits versus unsalted baits. There's no real clear winner. They both have their applications. Fish what you have confidence in. And perhaps one day you might want to get curious and change over to the other side just to see what happens. You never know. That might be the ticket that takes your fish catching right through the roof. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.